Time for us to review the papers to see what the big stories making the headlines are. Joining us today is public affairs analyst Dotun Ojon. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Good morning.
This speech is giving a Luta continuity. I love it so much.
Yeah, with a Kango.
I love it.
Thank you.
Cap.
Hope the fuel scarcity hasn't touched you, because we're already seeing the queues on the way to work.
I actually saw the queue too. I'm just praying. And in my usual way, I often tell people that the first thing I abandon anytime there's fuel scarcity is my vehicle. I just start jumping public transport. And I tell you that's the most difficult thing anybody can do in Lagos.
Wow. Yeah. Anyway, let's begin with the papers this morning and see what the front pages have to say. Remember that you can also call the phone number on your TV screen to be a part of the conversations we're having this morning. We begin with the Punch newspaper. On the front page of the Punch newspaper this morning, fuel scarcity looms as depot raise petrol price to 720 naira to a litre. Filling stations raise petrol price as depot now sells 720 naira to a litre, says Ipman. NNPC officials storm Lagos depots, asks marketers to prioritize Abuja. Budget, federal government releases 1.2 trillion naira for capital projects. ECOWAS, Senegal, Togo presidents to woo Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso. Whenever I hear that, it just feels like, the way boys are toasting girls. If you toast them, our last guest said they no go grill. Varsities boil again as federal government now to meet workers protests Sorry, I take that again. Varsities boil again as federal government and ASU meet. Workers protest Tuesday. Mother daughter killed in Ogun gas explosion. 2 hospitalized. Sad story there. And on the flooding, federal government activates state emergency centers. Governor's orders evacuation. Poverty alleviation. Court orders Buhari's minister to explain 720 billion naira disbursement. People be calling numbers, just like 720 billion naira. Anyway, let's move away from the Punch to this Nigerian newspaper.
And of course, on this Nigerian newspaper this morning, the big story has it, 729 billion naira alleged diversion. Court orders ex-Humanitarian Affairs Minister Umar Farouk to account for funds. Also, we have it, ATM POS customers express frustration over failed transaction. CBN urges affected account holders to direct complaints to Consumer Protection Department. On a sad note, gunmen abduct 2 journalist family members in Kaduna. 5 reporters, 24 others killed in airstrikes on Gaza. Still on this Nigeria, public institutions, not personnel enterprises, Tinubu wants. Southeast states gross $1.89 billion debt in 4 years, says report. And we also have a tripping of power station unit cause grid collapse, according to the TCN. And that's on this Nigeria. Also, Daily Independent is next. On Daily Independent this morning, let's also tell you that the big story has it. Federal government leased 36 state-owned institutions qualified for student loans. This is one conversation that, of course, has been, on the front burner. And then, an interesting one, why tomato prices are on fire, according to farmers and stakeholders, as federal government should open border and subsidize fertilizers, according to the MBF and Northern News. Also on Daily Independent, NASU commence protest tomorrow ahead of national strike. And then we have court orders ex-minister to account for 729 billion naira poverty alleviation fund. And then we have aviation security expert disagree over empowering AVSEC to bear arms. That's on page 6. And then we have a Tinubu re-elected, ECOWAS chairman seeks funding for standby force. Again, Atiku raises the alarm over escalating insecurity. And of course, this is just some of the stories on Daily Independent. Let's move to Vanguard newspaper right now. We are on the Vanguard this morning. The big story has it, brewing industry choking over high cost of raw materials. And then just above the masthead, we have why this nonsense must stop, according to Abiola. And then we also have insecurity. Tinubu tasks ECOWAS member states to finance commitments. And just above the masthead also, we have why CBN insists on another recapitalization, according to Cardoso. And then we have there, I think basically that's just a big one. Another big story says court orders ex-minister to account for 729 billion naira. Well, just a few of the stories on the Vanguard this morning.
Right now, let's get into the conversations proper, and let's go back to the front page of the first paper, the Punch newspaper, and have the big conversation. Fuel scarcity looms. Mr. Dotun Ojon, talk to us about this dance that we're always playing with fuel scarcity. It just feels like 2 days on, 1 day off. 2 days on, 1 day off. When we seem to be getting some sense of normalcy, I mean, we then have fuel scarcity. Which way, really, Nigeria? Okay,
I think the best way to start this morning is to tell you that you do not expect one aspect of your economy to work while the other aspects are not working. And critical aspects of our economy, you talk about the petroleum sector. It's our biggest earning as it is today. And if your forex is half an issue, then it will be an over-ambition for you to expect that that sector will not have issue, more so that we've not been able to tackle the problem of importation and export of crude. So as it is today, everybody seems to know the answer to the question of why we have the occurrence of queue in our nations. But of course, we can only wish and pray that the government will have the courage to tackle it once and for all. And what is the solution? If somebody may be asking this morning, the solution is that Nigerians consume presently less than 50 million liters of petrol daily. And if you put our 4 refineries together, we have the capacity to refine close to 500,000 barrels per day. But as we speak now, in the last 10 years, I've not seen that we had a time where we have any of our refinery working at 20% capacity. So, and they've been turnaround maintenance. About 2-3 years ago, over $1.3 billion was expended on turnaround maintenance. But as we speak now, it's still the same situation. And government keeps shifting the goalposts as to when our local refineries will start working.
Is this more of a technical issue? I mean, I'm talking about recent developments right now, or just some sort of sabotage in that sector? Maybe economic sabotage, because I mean, from what we understand, particularly on this one, it has it that private depot owners hiked, their depot price. That's from 630 to about 720.
That headline would be very, very unfair, because it comes across as if they deliberately just did that. But if you dig deeper, you will understand the fact that it's a concept of what I bought. If I bought something at a certain amount of money, I'm not going to sell it less than that price. So the method in that sector is that NNPC, I think, is the major or the sole importer, as we speak now, of petroleum product. So NNPC said directly to major marketers. And major marketers don't have up to 50% capacity to actually feed the entire nation. So by extension, major marketers also sell to all of these small marketers that you see. There are petrol stations all around now, all around town. So major marketers, as we speak now, still sell about below 650 naira per liter. But some, I forgot their name. Some of the other small marketers, actually, we get their fuel, not directly from the NNPC. We get their fuel from the major marketers. But this is the situation. Even the major marketers are not getting enough from NNPC. You will remember about a few months ago, is it a few months or a few days ago, that a newspaper actually came out to say that Nigeria is owing about $6 billion to those people we import fuel from. It means that if we are unable to pay, and this thing started about February, as at February, we were owing them about $3 billion. And the Nigerian government, or the NNPCL, had come out to say that that never existed. But the fear now is that there's a gap between supply and consumption. What that means is that if we are actually consuming about 50 million liters per day, that NNPC is unable to meet that consumption because of the fact that it's owing. But again, you know that our communication style in Nigeria is that we continue to hide the fact to deceive the entire public. But the reality cannot be taken away. People are returning to fuel station to queue.
I mean, I'm still going to stay with you on that. You talked about the NNPC also playing a pivotal role, but we've seen cases where the NNPC has actually, come out a couple of times to say, you know what, we have supply in excess, no need for panic buying and all of that. Yet, we've seen in the past where this scarcity still happens. So it still brings back my question. Are you saying that in all of it, you don't have individuals or entities who maybe for private, interest or greed just want to hold the economy? And I use the word the economy because right now people cannot move around to go about their businesses because of this scarcity. Transportation, to some extent, is grounded. Are you saying that there are no private interests, no private power play, no individuals, no entities at work in all of this?
In philosophy, there's this principle of 10% that I'll quickly bring in. In every community you see, there's the possibility of a 10% wanting to commit crime. It is the duty of the government to rally the remaining 90% to fight against these people. As we speak now, we are back to square one. What do I mean by that? Is that people have begun to smuggle our fuel now. And it's a conversation that you have. It's like when you say, oh, we detected a ship in the waters of Nigeria. Ship is not toy that my kids use at home. And it's the same thing with tankers and trailers. So, and this is how they do it. The old practice is that when government was paying subsidy, they import into Nigeria. They collect money for subsidy. Because if you look at it, Nigeria, from across the West Africa zone, because we are producing oil, you see that our own is about the least in terms of how much we pay. So they will collect subsidy on it and still take it out of Nigeria to go and sell in Niger, in Cameroon, and some neighboring country. And I think we are back to that now. So people are smuggling petrol product and PMS out of Nigeria. But again, that is not my problem. Are you the one that is going to stop them? If customs cannot come out to say, oh, we can actually nip this in the bud, then NNPC will be answerable to the Nigerian people. Right. Because both the NNPC, I forgot the number of stake, the amount of stake that the Nigerian government has in NNPC. So both the NNPC and the Nigerian government will still be held responsible. All right,
let's move on to another story. Let's look at ECOWAS. It's still on the front page of the Punch newspaper. Senegal, Togo presidents to woo Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso. What are your thoughts on, first of all, President Bola Tinubu being appointed for a second term in office and the possibility of Joma Faye wooing these three, countries back into the regional bloc? Do you see that happening?
Yeah, I want to believe that from history and from the reality of what we have around, we have come to realize that we are better together. In fact, there was an article I read where somebody was painting the picture of how hard it is for Nigerians to get visa to some African countries. And I think one or two of us might have experienced that to get visa within Africa is even so difficult compared to when you want to get visa to visit Europe. And the reality is that Africa is now the future of the world, either you like it or not. If you have traveled around the world, you will see that the importance of Africa cannot be overemphasized because we have the resource that the world is looking for. In fact, when it comes to human resource, I think Africa and Nigeria is the first to talk about rather. So, but if we now continue, if we cannot throw our weight around as individual countries, we should be able to throw our weight around as a bloc. For instance, Naira is dipping, is falling by the day. So is some other currencies across the West Africa zone. So if we are able to come together strong, if we are able to put our resource on the table and come across to the world as a serious-minded people and revert back to our earlier plan of having a single currency. Is it ECO? I can't remember the name of the currency. If we revert back to having a single currency and we can put our feet on the ground and demand a place in the security this thing of the United Nations. So you will see that a lot of people will take us seriously. But unfortunately, this will not happen. And there are three reasons why it will not happen. Majority of people that came to power in Africa as president are there because of self, not because of society. Majority of people that come to power in Africa are not there to better the lot of the people. They just want to better the lot of their pocket. Number three, the majority of people that come to power in Africa are not doing so to represent even the regional bloc. Everybody is looking inward to see what can I gain from the governance process. And I was telling us some times ago that this is actually a result of our inherited leadership style, What is our inherited leadership style? I call it traditionalism. If you go visit the traditional ruler of your community, he expects you to bring something. If he comes to visit you, he still expects you to drop something. So generally, the concept of leadership in Africa is what you can get, not what you can give. So people get to political power in Africa, and everyone is thinking of what can I get from the process and not what I can give. If we can change our mentality from getting to giving, then you will know that it's going to be very easy for us to come together as a people to demand a common recognition.
I mean, before I ask you my next question, just, for our viewers at home, in case you want to be part of, the conversation at this time, the phone number is there on the screen, particularly for those in Nigeria. Let's know your experience this morning trying to get fuel, if at all. But my question to you would be, let's talk about the, of course, the idea, one pivotal issue having to do with the three countries that, I'm talking about Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, forming their own parallel, what I call it, sub-regional bloc right now, the Alliance of Sahel States. And ECOWAS being at the center of this conversation as to what are you doing to woo these guys back? What are you doing to integrate them? What are you doing about the situation in these countries? Yeah,
you see, I think the major problem was communication. And it is very clear. When that issue happened, I wasn't expecting ECOWAS to speak as if they were speaking to divide. They laid emphasis on consequences instead of reconciliation. It is very clear that our democratic practice has brought more burden than blessing, except if anybody wants to deny that fact. In fact, I was reading in the 11th month of President Tinubu in Nigeria, about 15 billion naira was allocated to the presidential fleet. Before then, for about 10 years, they didn't spend up to 500 million, of course, because the military head of states were not traveling, they were not going out. In fact, in 1997, it was stated that Abacha only went out of Abuja 5 times. But if you see democracy as it were, you discover that it created more loopholes. And for the Gen Zs, for the millennials, who believe that democracy should give them more, you will see that they may begin to look outside of democracy to get the satisfaction of governance that they desire. It doesn't mean the satisfaction is out of democracy, but we have to be deliberate. So when this issue happened, there were more communication on consequences than reconciliation. I think that's what even scattered everything. So I was expecting a situation where we speak to reconcile, not to divide. Now they've gone back to speaking to reconcile. This is what we are supposed to do ab initio. So I think we will continue to learn as a bloc that more than one time we have disagreement. More than one time, some of us may want to pull away. But how we actually communicate, how we come across to one another as family really matters in the entire game of international relations.
Let's move to this Nigerian newspaper. The big story there, court orders ex-humanitarian affairs minister Umar Farouk to account for funds. That's talking about the 729 billion naira alleged diversion. Let's talk about this.
I almost off my cap, really, because it's scary.
729 billion.
Let me shock you that most of these monies that we talk about are actually not taken out in naira. And that is why when naira was falling the other time, and I saw the deliberate attempt, I call it attempt of the CBN to actually stabilize naira, and that's when it came to 1,000, and it was almost trading at 990 something naira. But there's one aspect of it that the government is not paying attention to. It's those people that are stealing our money. In fact, I have come to realize that majority of people in power, in government, and in high places who steal money don't steal money in naira. They steal money in hard currency. And by extension, when you take away this money out of the system, you dump it somewhere, it doesn't have effect on your economy. It only puts pressure on your economy. And that's why we are talking about forex today, scarcity of forex. There's no how that naira should be trading at 1,500 against the dollar if the issue of corruption is not pronounced. So people in power have devised means of legally and illegally stealing money. This is how to legally steal money. You make budgetary provision for a non-existent project. that means that you have legally taken out the money.
Is there a legal way of stealing money?
That is how they do it. The legal stealing is that you make, because it is annoying. For instance, if you get to Aso Rock budget, I don't know whether you read it about 2 years ago. Okay. I think before this government came on board. For 3 years, consecutively, for 3 years, we had budgetary provision for cutlery in Aso Rock. And this is not 1,000 naira, this is not 2,000 naira. And if you continue to prune down the agencies of government, you discover that there are budgetary provisions for a lot of things that government at the end of the day will not get to purchase. And when you create this atmosphere, you have given legal backing to corruption. Because what you make, the document you see that is called budget is the destiny direction of any nation. When you read through the budget, you should know where your nation is heading. But in Nigeria case, you read through the budget, instead of having hope, you are depressed. Because you know that, number one, the budget may not get to perform more than 70% in performance. Number two, majority of the provision in the budget is creating loophole for people to steal money. And when they steal this money, then it results to argument between labor and government. What is the argument? Oh, we don't have enough money to pay. But if you had blocked the loopholes, you will discover that the problem we have is not lack of money, it's excess of money. In fact, Nigeria has money to a point that it has given room for people to begin to steal without caution. So if one person is accused, I'm not even saying head guilty, for somebody to be accused of having dipped a hand into the coffers of government to take away this amount of money, it means that there's an issue. So government, if you don't tackle the issue of corruption, why was it that before democracy, our Naira was doing well? You are not supposed to compare democracy with military government. But why is it that during military government, our Naira was more stable? In fact, for the period of Abacha, I think the Naira was 22 Naira for about 6 years. It didn't move an inch. Why? Because there was a controlled corruption. I'm not saying there was no corruption in military, but they were able to control it in a way that not everybody will come and dip his hand. If you get to Europe and the West,
some might contest that.
Of course, there's room for contestation.
What democracy you mentioned, we are still getting the look from
what democracy has done. What democracy has done is to give hope for the people that their nation will develop, and at the same time, open window for politicians to take money without caution. And I think we must continue to lay emphasis that the economy cannot grow. Everywhere in the world there's corruption. What government does is to ensure that you do not take it to the point where you rub it on people's faces. And that's exactly what has happened now. And that's why it is no longer logical for Labour to come to the table and discuss with the government, because they know that with the reality of what is coming into the nation, that everybody should have access to this word called prosperity.
All right, Lam, let's move to another newspaper this morning. Let's move to This Nigeria, where, of course, a top story there still has it that gunmen abduct 2 journalists' family members. Very tragic one in Kaduna. I mean, this story did break out sometime yesterday. Not just the journalists themselves, but their spouses and children. And this brings to the fore the issue of insecurity in the country.
I think we are battling with a lot of things. And anytime, people may not take this very seriously, but I say it with all sense of responsibility. Anytime there's economic pressure, there's always an increase in the level of insecurity. It has been proven again and again that welfareism is a form of development, because when you cater to your people, there's this reasonable assumption that the level of insecurity in such community will also reduce. But what we've had now in the past 1 year is hardship of in a magnitude that has not been experienced by anybody. So it is becoming exceedingly difficult, if not practically impossible, for people to stay away from crime. And that is not to say that we are supporting those people who have taken to crime, but government must know that one other way to solve the problem of insecurity is beyond carrying gun. It's beyond even empowering your security men. It's also the fact that you need to tend to the people, care for them, provide for their basic needs, don't suffocate them and allow the poor to breathe.
Thank you so much, Dotun Ojon, for joining us. It's been always a pleasure to have you. We'll look forward to speaking with you again. We're going on a quick break, and when we come back, more conversations this morning on Breakfast Central.